The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the rocky terrain of Afghanistan, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Dr. Sarah Mitchell wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand, leaving a small smudge of dirt across her pale skin. At 28, she had already seen more trauma and death than most people would witness in 3 lifetimes. Her blonde hair was pulled back tightly under her military cap, and her green eyes held a determination that had saved countless lives over the past 18 months. The field hospital she worked in was nothing more than a collection of tents and makeshift structures, but it was home. Sarah had volunteered for this deployment against the wishes of her family back in Nebraska. Her parents, both successful doctors themselves, couldn't understand why their brilliant daughter would leave her promising career in emergency medicine to serve in one of the most dangerous places on earth. Because someone has to, she had told them simply, and that was all the explanation she ever gave. The morning started like any other. Sarah was checking on patients when the radio crackled to life with urgent chatter. A patrol had encountered heavy resistance about 10 kilometers from their position. Multiple casualties were expected. Sarah's heart rate quickened as she began preparing for what was to come. "Mitchell, we need you ready," called out Major Thompson, the commanding officer of their medical unit. His weathered face showed the strain of too many battles and too many losses. "This one sounds bad." Sarah nodded, checking her supplies one more time. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, organizing medications, surgical instruments, and blood products. She had learned that preparation could mean the difference between life and death when wounded soldiers arrived at their door. The first helicopter landed in a cloud of dust and debris. Sarah shielded her eyes as she ran toward the aircraft, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. The crew chief jumped out, his face grim. "4 wounded, 1 critical," he shouted over the noise of the rotors. Navy SEAL took a direct hit from an IED. His team carried him 3 miles under fire. Sarah's stomach dropped. SEALs were elite warriors, but they were still human, still vulnerable to the brutal realities of war. She watched as the medics unloaded the first patient, then the second. The third soldier was conscious but badly injured. But it was the fourth stretcher that made her breath catch in her throat. The man lying unconscious before her was massive, even by military standards. His uniform was torn and bloodied, revealing powerful arms and a chest that rose and fell in shallow, irregular breaths. His dark hair was matted with blood and dirt, but even in his unconscious state, there was something about his face that spoke of incredible strength and determination. "What's his status?" Sarah asked, falling into step beside the stretcher as they rushed toward the medical tent. "Severe abdominal trauma, possible internal bleeding, compound fracture of the left leg, and he's been unconscious for 20 minutes, the medic reported. Blood pressure is dropping fast." Sarah felt her training kick in, pushing aside any emotion as she focused on the task at hand. This wasn't just another patient. This was someone's son, brother, maybe husband or father. Someone who had chosen to serve his country and was now fighting for his life because of that choice. In the medical tent, Sarah quickly assessed the situation. The SEAL's injuries were extensive, but not hopeless. She had seen worse, and she had saved patients in worse condition. But this one would require everything she had learned, every skill she possessed. "I need 2 units of O-negative blood, a surgical kit, and someone to assist," she called out. The medical team moved around her like a well-choreographed dance, each person knowing their role without hesitation. As Sarah worked, she couldn't help but notice details about her patient. His hands, though covered in dirt and blood, were strong and calloused. There was a small scar on his chin, probably from childhood, and a tattoo on his forearm that read "Never Quit" in bold letters. These little details made him real, made him more than just another casualty. Hours passed as Sarah fought to stabilize his condition. She repaired internal bleeding, set his broken leg, and treated numerous smaller wounds. Through it all, He remained unconscious, his breathing the only sound in the suddenly quiet tent. At one point during the surgery, his blood pressure dropped dangerously low. Sarah watched the monitors with growing concern as the numbers continued to fall. This was the critical moment, the point where her skills would either be enough or they wouldn't. "Come on," she whispered, working faster. "Don't give up on me now." She made a decision that was risky, but necessary. Instead of playing it safe, she chose a more aggressive treatment approach. It could save him, or it could kill him faster. But doing nothing would certainly mean death. As she worked, Sarah found herself talking to him, even though he couldn't hear her. "I don't know your name, but I know you're a fighter. Your team carried you 3 miles because they believe in you. I believe in you too, so you need to fight." Slowly, gradually, his vital signs began to stabilize. His blood pressure rose to acceptable levels, and his breathing became more regular. Sarah allowed herself a small moment of relief, but she knew he wasn't out of danger yet. For the next 12 hours, Sarah barely left his side. She monitored his condition constantly, adjusting medications and treatments as needed. Other wounded soldiers came and went, but she found herself drawn back to the unconscious SEAL. It was during the early hours of the morning, when the desert was finally cool and quiet, that he first showed signs of consciousness. Sarah was checking his bandages when she noticed his eyes moving beneath his closed lids. Then slowly they opened. His eyes were the deepest blue she had ever seen, like the ocean on a clear day. For a moment, they were unfocused, confused. But then they found her face, and something passed between them that Sarah couldn't quite name. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough and barely above a whisper. "You're safe," Sarah said softly. "You're at a field hospital. You were injured, but you're going to be okay." He tried to sit up, but Sarah gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Easy. You need a rest. You've been through a lot." "My team," he said urgently. "Are they okay?" "They're fine. All of them made it back safely because of your sacrifice." Something in his expression relaxed slightly, but Sarah could see the pain he was in, both physical and emotional. "What's your name, soldier?" "Lieutenant Jack Morrison, United States Navy," he replied, even in his weakened state maintaining military protocol. "I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. And you, Lieutenant Morrison, are very lucky to be alive." Jack looked at her for a long moment, taking in her tired face, her gentle eyes, and the blood on her surgical scrubs. "You saved my life." It wasn't a question, and Sarah felt something stir in her chest. "I just did my job." "No," Jack said, his blue eyes intense despite his weakness. "You did more than that. I can tell." Over the next few days, as Jack recovered, Sarah found herself spending more time with him than strictly necessary from a medical standpoint. She told herself it was because his case had been particularly challenging that she needed to monitor him closely. But deep down, she knew there was something more. Jack was unlike any patient she had treated. Despite his injuries and the trauma he had endured, he maintained an optimism and strength that was infectious. He asked about her work, her life before the military, her reasons for being there. And slowly, Sarah found herself opening up to him in ways she rarely did with anyone. "Why did you really come here?" Jack asked one evening as Sarah was changing his bandages. Sarah paused, considering her answer. Most people accepted her simple explanations about duty and service. But Jack's question felt different, more genuine. "My brother died in a car accident when I was in medical school," she said finally. "He was only 20, just a kid, really. The doctors couldn't save him, and I couldn't either. I became a doctor because I wanted to save people, but when it really mattered, I was helpless." Jack listened quietly, his eyes never leaving her face. "When I heard about the need for medical personnel over here, I knew I had to come. Here, my skills could mean the difference between someone going home to their family or not. Here, I could actually make a difference." "And you do," Jack said simply. "You made a difference for me." Sarah felt tears threatening, but she blinked them away. She couldn't afford to get emotional, especially not with a patient. But Jack wasn't just any patient anymore. and they both knew it. As Jack's strength returned, so did his sense of duty. Sarah knew that as soon as he was medically cleared, he would return to his unit. The thought filled her with a sadness she didn't want to examine too closely. "I'll be discharged soon," Jack said one morning, as if reading her thoughts. "Yes, probably within the week," Sarah agreed, keeping her voice professional. "Sarah," Jack said, using her first name for the first time, "I need to tell you something." She looked up from his chart, meeting his eyes. "I've been a soldier for 12 years. I've been deployed 6 times to places most people couldn't imagine. In all that time, I never met anyone who made me want to be somewhere else." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But lying here talking to you these past few days has made me think about what I want my life to look like when all this is over." Sarah felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Jack, you're still recovering. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," he said. "I know this isn't the time or place, and I know we barely know each other. But I also know that you saved more than just my life. You reminded me what I'm fighting for." Before Sarah could respond, the tent flap opened and Major Thompson entered with a clipboard in his hand. "Morrison, good news. You've been cleared for transport. There's a bird leaving for Germany in 2 hours, and from there you'll head back stateside for full recovery." Sarah felt her world tilt. She had known this was coming, but knowing and being ready were two different things. Jack's eyes never left Sarah's face. "Major, I'd like a moment to speak with Dr. Mitchell privately." "Of course. 2 minutes, then. We need to get you prepped for transport." When they were alone, Jack reached for Sarah's hand. His grip was strong, despite everything he had been through. "I meant what I said. This isn't over between us." Sarah wanted to tell him that relationships formed in war zones were artificial, that they were both just responding to trauma and stress. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't bring herself to say any of those things. "Jack, I'm deployed for another 10 months. You'll be recovering and then reassigned. We're from different worlds." "Then I'll wait," he said simply. "However long it takes." Sarah felt tears she couldn't hide anymore. "You don't even know me." "Not really. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to volunteer for a combat zone to save lives. I know you're skilled enough to piece me back together when I was more dead than alive. I know you're kind enough to sit with a stranger and listen to his fears. And I know that in the darkest moment of my life, you were the light that brought me back." The tent flap opened again, and this time it was the medics coming to transport Jack. "Doc, we need to move him now," one of them said. Jack squeezed Sarah's hand one more time. "Promise me something." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. "Promise me you'll be careful. Come home safe." "I promise," she whispered. As they wheeled Jack out of the tent, he called back to her. "Sarah, this isn't goodbye. It's just see you later." Standing alone in the suddenly empty tent, Sarah felt the full weight of what had just happened. In the space of a week, a wounded soldier had come into her life and changed everything. She didn't know if she would ever see Jack Morrison again, but she knew that she would never forget him. Outside, the helicopter carrying Jack lifted off, disappearing into the bright desert sky. Sarah watched until it was just a speck on the horizon, then turned back to her work. She had other patients to care for, other lives to save. But as she went through the motions of her daily routine, Sarah carried with her the memory of piercing blue eyes and a promise that somehow, someday, they would see each other again. She didn't know if such promises could survive the reality of war and distance and time. But for the first time since arriving in Afghanistan, Sarah found herself looking forward to going home. 3 months had passed since Jack Morrison left the field hospital in Afghanistan, but Sarah Mitchell still found herself thinking about him during quiet moments. His recovery, according to the limited information she could access, was progressing well. He had been transferred from Germany to a naval medical center in San Diego, where he was undergoing physical therapy and psychological evaluation. Sarah's own deployment continued with its relentless pace. The war didn't pause for personal feelings or unexpected connections. Every day brought new casualties, new emergencies, new tests of her medical skills, and emotional resilience. But something had changed in her approach to her work since Jack left. Where once she had maintained careful emotional distance from her patients, she now found herself more invested in their stories, their recovery, their journey home. She began to see each wounded soldier not just as a medical case, but as someone's Jack Morrison, someone who mattered deeply to people back home. "You seem different lately," observed Captain Lisa Rodriguez, a nurse who had become Sarah's closest friend at the base. They were sharing coffee during a rare, quiet evening, watching the sun set over the mountains that surrounded their compound. "Different how?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew what Lisa meant. "More present, I guess. You always cared about the patients, but lately you seem to really see them as people, not just medical challenges." Sarah smiled sadly. "A wise patient once reminded me what we're really fighting for out here." Lisa studied her friend's face carefully. Sarah wasn't one to open up easily about personal matters, but there was something in her expression that suggested there was more to the story. "This wouldn't have anything to do with that Navy SEAL you spent so much time with a few months back, would it?" Sarah's cheeks reddened slightly, which was answer enough for Lisa. "I knew it. You fell for a patient, didn't you?" "It's not that simple," Sarah protested. "We barely know each other. He was here for a week, most of which he was unconscious or heavily medicated. It's probably just trauma bonding or something equally unrealistic." "But," Lisa prompted, sensing there was more. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the darkening sky. "But I can't stop thinking about him, about the way he looked at life, even after everything he'd been through, about his strength and his optimism, about the way he made me feel like I was more than just a doctor doing her job." "Have you heard from him?" "No," Sarah admitted. "I wouldn't even know how to contact him if I wanted to. And I'm not sure I should want to." But even as she said it, Sarah knew it wasn't entirely true. She had thought about reaching out, had even gone so far as to research how she might be able to send a message through official channels. But each time, she talked herself out of it. Their connection had been forged in an extraordinary situation. It probably couldn't survive the ordinary world. What Sarah didn't know was that thousands of miles away in San Diego, Jack Morrison was having very similar thoughts. The Naval Medical Center was a far cry from the field hospital where he had met Sarah. Everything was clean, modern, and comfortable. The food was excellent, the staff was professional, and his recovery was progressing ahead of schedule. He should have been grateful, and he was. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something important was missing. "You're making excellent progress, Lieutenant," Dr. Rebecca Patterson, his orthopedic surgeon, told him during a routine appointment. "Your leg is healing better than we hoped, and your range of motion is improving daily. At this rate, you'll be cleared for full duty in another 2 months." "That's good news, ma'am," Jack replied, but his tone lacked enthusiasm. Dr. Patterson studied him carefully. She had been treating wounded warriors for 15 years, and she had learned to read the signs of psychological as well as physical healing. "How are you sleeping?" she asked. "Fine," Jack said automatically. "Jack, I'm not just asking as your doctor. I'm asking as someone who's seen hundreds of soldiers come through here." "You're not fine," Jack sighed, running his hand through his hair. It had grown out since Afghanistan, and he barely recognized himself in the mirror anymore. "I keep thinking about the field hospital, about the doctor who saved my life." Dr. Patterson nodded encouragingly. It wasn't unusual for patients to fixate on their caregivers, especially in trauma situations. "Dr. Mitchell," Jack continued. "She was extraordinary, not just as a doctor, but as a person. She chose to deploy to Afghanistan when she could have stayed safe in the States. She risked her life every day to save people like me. It sounds like she made quite an impression on you." "She changed my perspective on everything," Jack said honestly. "Before my injury, I was focused solely on the mission, on being the best SEAL I could be. Don't get me wrong, that's still important to me. But now I think about what comes after, what I want my life to look like when I'm done serving." Dr. Patterson waited patiently for him to continue. "I told her I would wait for her. She's still deployed for another 7 months. But what if she doesn't feel the same way when she comes home? What if what happened between us was just I don't know, battlefield emotion? Have you considered reaching out to her? Jack shook his head. She's got enough to worry about without getting letters from some guy who's probably more grateful than genuinely interested. Dr. Patterson smiled. Jack, I've known you for 3 months now. You're many things, but presumptuous isn't one of them. If you told this woman you'd wait for her, I'm guessing you meant it. And if she's half as special as you seem to think she is, maybe she meant it too when she didn't tell you not to wait. That conversation stayed with Jack as he continued his rehabilitation. His physical progress was remarkable, driven partly by his natural resilience and partly by his determination to get back to full strength. But it was the possibility of seeing Sarah again that truly motivated him. He began researching everything he could about Dr. Sarah Mitchell, not in a stalking way, but in a way that helped him understand the woman who had saved his life. He learned that she had graduated top of her class from medical school, that she had specialized in emergency medicine, and that she had turned down prestigious positions to volunteer for military service. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that his feelings weren't just gratitude or trauma response. Sarah Mitchell was exactly the kind of person he wanted to build a life with, assuming she would want to build one with him. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, Sarah was dealing with challenges she hadn't anticipated. The stress of constant danger, combined with the emotional weight of her work, was beginning to take its toll. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being able to handle whatever was thrown at her. But lately, she was struggling. The breaking point came during a particularly brutal week when they received casualties from 3 separate incidents. Sarah worked 18-hour days for 5 straight days, performing surgeries, monitoring patients, and making life-or-death decisions with little rest and enormous pressure. On the 6th day, she finally reached her limit. A young soldier, barely 19 years old, died on her table despite everything she tried to save him. It was the kind of loss that happened in war, the kind that was nobody's fault but still felt like a personal failure. Sarah walked out of the surgical tent and kept walking until she was alone behind the supply depot. There, finally out of sight of her colleagues and patients, she allowed herself to break down. She cried for the boy she couldn't save, for all the soldiers she had lost over the past 15 months, for the toll this deployment was taking on her spirit. And she cried because she missed Jack Morrison more than she had ever missed anyone in her life. Dr. Mitchell, Sarah looked up to see Major Thompson approaching cautiously. She quickly wiped her eyes, but he had already seen her tears. I'm fine, Major. Just needed a moment. No, you're not fine, he said gently. And that's okay. You've been carrying this load for a long time without breaking. That makes you human, not weak. Sarah appreciated his kindness, but she wasn't sure she believed him. I lost him, she said quietly. That boy was the same age as my brother when he died. I couldn't save either of them. Major Thompson sat down beside her on a supply crate. Sarah, you've saved 43 lives since you've been here. I know because I keep count. 43 soldiers are going home to their families because of your skill and dedication. But not him. No, not him. And that will always hurt. But you can't save them all, and the fact that you want to is what makes you an exceptional doctor. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the mountains. Major, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think connections made out here are real? Or are they just responses to extreme circumstances? Major Thompson smiled knowingly. You're thinking about Lieutenant Morrison. Sarah's surprise must have shown on her face because he chuckled. Sarah, I've been in the military for 25 years. I've seen a lot of relationships form under pressure. Most of them don't survive the transition back to civilian life. But every once in a while, you see something genuine, something that goes beyond the circumstances. How do you tell the difference? Time, he said simply. If it's real, it endures. If it's not, it fades when the adrenaline wears off. That night, for the first time since Jack left, Sarah wrote a letter. She didn't know if she would ever send it, but she needed to put her thoughts on paper. Jack, I don't know if you remember what you said before you left, but I remember every word. I've thought about you every day for the past 3 months, wondering if you're recovering well, wondering if you meant what you said about waiting. Today was particularly hard. We lost a young soldier, and it reminded me why I came here. But it also reminded me why what you said meant so much to me. In a place where we see so much death, you reminded me what life could be like. I have 7 months left on my deployment. I don't know what I'll be like when I come home, or if what I'm feeling now will survive that long. But I want you to know that if you're serious about waiting, I'm serious about coming home to someone who waited. Be safe, Jack. Take care of yourself. Sarah, she folded the letter and put it in her pocket, still unsure whether she would send it. But writing it had helped clarify something important. Her feelings for Jack Morrison weren't just about gratitude or trauma or the intensity of their situation. They were about the hope he represented, the possibility of a different kind of life. 2 weeks later, Sarah finally worked up the courage to send the letter. She had no idea if it would reach him or how he would respond if it did. But she needed him to know that she hadn't forgotten him either. What she didn't expect was that her letter would cross in the mail with one from Jack. Dear Sarah, I hope this letter finds you safe and well. I think about you every day and wonder how you're holding up under the pressure of your deployment. I know you're saving lives every day because that's who you are. My recovery is going well. I should be cleared for duty in about 6 weeks. When that happens, I'll have some choices to make about my future. I've been in the Navy for 12 years, and I've loved serving my country. But meeting you made me realize that there are other things I want in life, too. I meant what I said about waiting for you. If anything, the time apart has made me more certain, not less. I don't know what we have together, but I know it's worth finding out. I've been thinking about what you said about making a difference. You make a difference every day in ways you probably don't even realize. You certainly made a difference in my life. 7 more months seems like forever, but I'll wait as long as it takes. Come home safe. Jack. When Sarah received Jack's letter 3 weeks later, she cried again. But this time, they were tears of relief and hope rather than despair. Someone was waiting for her. Someone who understood what she was doing and why it mattered. The knowledge that Jack was thinking about her, planning a future that included her, gave Sarah strength during the difficult final months of her deployment. She threw herself into her work with renewed purpose, knowing that every life she saved brought her one step closer to going home. And thousands of miles away, Jack continued his rehabilitation with the same determination, driven by the knowledge that somewhere in a field hospital in Afghanistan, an extraordinary woman was counting down the days until she could come home to him. Neither of them knew for certain what would happen when they were finally reunited, but both of them believed it would be worth the wait. The C-130 cargo plane touched down at Dover Air Force Base on a cold February morning, carrying Sarah Mitchell and 24 other military personnel home from their deployment in Afghanistan. As the aircraft taxied to a stop, Sarah felt a mixture of emotions she wasn't prepared for. Relief, certainly. Exhaustion from 18 months of intensive service. But also anxiety about what came next. She had exchanged several more letters with Jack Morrison during her final months overseas. Each one had deepened their connection, but also heightened her uncertainty about whether their feelings could translate to real life. Letters were one thing. Actually building a relationship was something else entirely. Jack's last letter had been brief, but meaningful. I'll be there when you land. If you want me to be. Sarah had written back a simple response. I want you to be. Now, as she gathered her gear and prepared to disembark, Sarah wondered if she had made the right choice. What if seeing Jack again proved that their connection had been a product of extreme circumstances? What if the man waiting for her was different from the wounded soldier she had fallen for in a field hospital tent? The door of the aircraft opened, and Sarah stepped out into the crisp winter air. The tarmac was filled with families waiting to welcome their loved ones home. She scanned the crowd, looking for a face she hadn't seen in over a year. Then she saw him. Jack Morrison stood near the back of the crowd, wearing civilian clothes and looking nervous. He was taller than she remembered and broader through the shoulders. His dark hair was longer, and there was no sign of the injuries that had brought them together. But his eyes were exactly as she remembered them, deep blue and intense, locked on her face with an expression of hope and uncertainty. For a moment, neither of them moved. They simply looked at each other across the crowded tarmac, each taking in the reality of the other. Sarah felt her heart racing as she realized that seeing Jack again didn't diminish what she felt. If anything, it intensified it. Jack began walking toward her, slowly at first, then faster. Other families were running to embrace their returning soldiers, but Jack and Sarah approached each other with careful deliberation, as if they both understood the significance of this moment. When they were finally face to face, Jack spoke first. "Dr. Sarah Mitchell," he said softly, his voice exactly as she remembered it. "Lieutenant Jack Morrison," she replied, surprised by how emotional she felt. "Actually, it's just Jack now," he said with a slight smile. "I got out of the Navy 2 months ago." Sarah's eyes widened. She knew from his letters that he was considering leaving the military, but she hadn't expected him to actually do it. "Jack, you didn't have to. I didn't do it for you," he said quickly, then immediately backtracked. "I mean, not only for you. I did it because meeting you made me realize I wanted something different for my life. The military gave me everything I thought I wanted for 12 years, but I'm ready for the next chapter." They stood there for another moment, both uncertain about what came next. Then Jack smiled, the same smile that had comforted Sarah during her darkest moments overseas. "This is awkward, isn't it?" he said. Sarah laughed, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Completely awkward. I thought about this moment for months, and I still don't know what to say. How about we start with hello?" "Hello, Jack." "Hello, Sarah. Welcome home." The simple words broke through Sarah's remaining reservations. This was the same man who had looked at life with optimism even while wounded and fighting for his life. The same man who had seen something special in her when she couldn't see it herself. "I missed you," she said quietly. Jack's smile widened. "I missed you too, more than you know." The reunion wasn't the romantic movie moment Sarah had sometimes imagined. There was no passionate embrace or kiss in the middle of the tarmac. Instead, Jack offered to carry her bags, and they walked together toward the terminal, talking quietly and getting reacquainted. "Where are you staying?" Jack asked as they waited for Sarah's additional luggage. "I have a hotel room in Dover for tonight. Then I fly to Nebraska tomorrow to see my parents." Jack nodded. "How long will you be there?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. I need to decompress before I figure out what comes next in my career. And after that," Sarah looked at him, seeing the hope in his eyes. "I don't know yet. I have some options. There's a position at Johns Hopkins that would be perfect for my experience. And a hospital in San Diego has been recruiting me pretty aggressively." "San Diego?" Jack's interest was obvious. "Is that where you're living now?" "For now. I'm using my GI benefits to finish my degree. Business administration. I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit organization to help veterans transition to civilian life." Sarah was impressed, but not surprised. This was exactly the kind of thing she would have expected from Jack, finding a way to continue serving others even after leaving the military. "That sounds amazing," she said sincerely. "It's just an idea right now. But I've learned a lot about what veterans need during the transition process. I think I could make a difference." "I think you could too." They retrieved Sarah's luggage and made their way to Jack's rental car. The drive to her hotel was filled with conversation about their respective journeys over the past year. Jack told her about his rehabilitation, his decision to leave the Navy, and his plans for the future. Sarah shared stories from her final months in Afghanistan, the patients she had saved, and the challenges she had faced. "There was this one night," Sarah said as they pulled into the hotel parking lot, "when we had 5 casualties come in at once. I was working on this kid who couldn't have been more than 20, and I kept thinking about what you said about fighting for something bigger than yourself. It helped me focus when I wanted to fall apart." Jack turned off the engine and looked at her. "You never needed me to be strong, Sarah. You were already the strongest person I'd ever met." "I didn't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling confident all the time. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're scared or tired or overwhelmed. You did that every day." Sarah felt tears threatening again. It had been a long, emotional day, and she was exhausted. Jack, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Are you sure this isn't just gratitude or some kind of trauma bond? Because I've been thinking about this for a year, and I'm still not entirely sure what's real and what's just circumstance. Jack was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. Do you want to know what convinced me this was real? He finally asked. Sarah nodded. It was about 6 months ago. I was at a friend's wedding, watching him marry this amazing woman he'd been dating for 3 years. They were so happy, so perfect together. And all I could think about was how much I wanted to share that moment with you. Not because I felt grateful to you, or because I was traumatized, but because I wanted you to be part of my life in all the ordinary moments, not just the extraordinary ones. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. I started imagining what it would be like to wake up next to you every morning, to share coffee and read the newspaper together, to argue about what to watch on TV. Boring, everyday stuff. That's when I knew it was real. Jack, I know we need to take this slow, he said quickly. I know we need to get to know each other in normal circumstances. I'm not asking you to make any big decisions right now. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. Sarah looked at this man who had waited for her for over a year, who had changed the entire course of his life partly because of what they had shared in a field hospital tent. She thought about all the reasons she should be cautious, all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about the alternative, walking away from something that could be extraordinary because she was afraid of getting hurt. I fly out to San Diego next month, she said, to interview for that position at the hospital. Jack's face lit up. Really? Really? And maybe while I'm there, you could show me around the city. Help me decide if it's somewhere I could see myself living. I would love to do that. Sarah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. Good. Because I have a lot of questions about your nonprofit idea. It sounds like something I might want to be involved in. Jack reached across the car and took her hand. His grip was just as strong as she remembered, but gentler now, less desperate. Sarah, I want you to know that whatever happens between us, I'm grateful for what you gave me. You saved my life in more ways than one. You saved mine too, she said softly. You gave me something to fight for, something to come home to. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the reality of being together again. This is going to be complicated, Sarah said eventually. The best things usually are. We might be making a huge mistake, or we might be making the best decision of our lives. Sarah laughed. You're impossibly optimistic, you know that? If all my best qualities, along with my devastating good looks and my ability to make pancakes shaped like animals. Pancakes shaped like animals? It's a skill I developed during my recovery. Turns out I have a natural talent for breakfast food artistry. Sarah found herself laughing harder than she had in months. This was the Jack she remembered. The man who could find humor even in difficult situations, who could make her smile when she felt like the world was falling apart. I want to see these pancakes, she said. Tomorrow? I could pick you up for breakfast before you fly to Nebraska. I'd like that. Jack squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. I should let you get some rest. You've had a long day. Jack. Yeah. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for being worth the wait. As Sarah watched Jack drive away, she felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced in years. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since leaving Afghanistan, she was excited to find out. The next morning, Jack arrived at her hotel with coffee and a smile that made Sarah's heart skip. They drove to a small diner where Jack ordered pancakes and proceeded to turn them into what he claimed were elephants, but looked more like misshapen clouds. I may have oversold my artistic abilities, he admitted, causing Sarah to burst into laughter. They're perfect, she said, and meant it. Over breakfast, they talked about everything and nothing. Their conversation flowed as easily as it had in the field hospital, but now it was seasoned with possibility rather than uncertainty. When it was time for Sarah to leave for the airport, Jack walked her to the departure gate. Call me when you get to Nebraska, he asked. I will. And Sarah, take your time with your family. Don't rush back because of me. We have all the time in the world now. Do we? Jack nodded seriously. We found each other once under impossible circumstances. I'm not worried about a little time and distance now. This time, when they said goodbye, it felt different. Not final, but filled with promise. As Sarah boarded her plane to Nebraska, she carried with her the certainty that she was heading towards something wonderful, not away from it. The man she had saved on a battlefield in Afghanistan had done far more than wait for her. He had given her a reason to believe in the future again. 2 years later, Sarah Mitchell stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her San Diego apartment, adjusting the simple gold necklace Jack had given her for their first anniversary. The apartment was small but cozy, with a view of the harbor and walls decorated with photos from their travels together. In 24 hours, it would no longer be her apartment. It would be their home. Tomorrow was her wedding day. The journey from that awkward reunion at Dover Air Force Base to this moment hadn't always been smooth. Building a relationship in normal circumstances after connecting in such extraordinary ones had required patience, understanding, and several honest conversations about their expectations and fears. Sarah's interview in San Diego had gone exceptionally well, and she had accepted the position at the trauma center. But more importantly, her week exploring the city with Jack had convinced her that she wanted to build a life there. Not just because of him, but because San Diego felt like home in a way nowhere else ever had. Jack's nonprofit organization, Heroes Bridge, had become a reality 6 months after Sarah moved to California. What had started as an idea had grown into a thriving organization that helped veterans transition to civilian careers, provided mental health resources, and created community connections. Sarah had become involved as a volunteer, providing medical consulting and helping develop their wellness programs. Knock, knock, came a voice from the living room. Sarah's sister Emma had arrived from Nebraska to help with wedding preparations. "Come in," Sarah called, emerging from the bathroom. Emma entered carrying coffee and wearing a smile that had been permanent since Sarah announced her engagement 6 months earlier. "How are you feeling, bride-to-be?" Emma asked, handing Sarah a mug. "Nervous, excited, terrified, all of the above. That sounds about right for someone getting married tomorrow." Sarah sat down on her bed, curling her legs beneath her. "Em, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think I'm crazy? Marrying someone I met under such unusual circumstances? Someone I've only been with for 2 years." Emma studied her sister's face carefully. She had watched Sarah transform over the past 2 years from someone who was dedicated but somewhat detached from life to someone who was fully engaged and genuinely happy. "Sarah, I've seen you with Jack dozens of times now. I've watched the way you two interact, the way you support each other, the way you challenge each other to be better. I've never seen you as happy as you are with him. But, no buts, you're not crazy. You're in love with a man who loves you back just as much. The circumstances of how you met don't matter anymore. What matters is what you've built together." Sarah nodded, feeling some of her anxiety ease. Emma was right. The strength of her relationship with Jack wasn't based on their dramatic beginning, but on the life they had created together day by day. Meanwhile, across town, Jack was having a similar conversation with his best man and fellow former SEAL, Marcus Rodriguez. They were at Jack's apartment, which was in complete disarray as he packed his belongings for the move to Sarah's place after the honeymoon. "You sure you're ready for this, brother?" Marcus asked, helping Jack fold dress shirts into a suitcase. "Never been more sure of anything in my life," Jack replied without hesitation. "Even when you decided to become a SEAL?" Jack paused, considering the question. "That was different. Becoming a SEAL was about proving something to myself, about pushing my limits. Marrying Sarah is about building something bigger than myself." Marcus smiled. "You know, when you first told me about meeting a doctor in Afghanistan, I thought it was just post-traumatic gratitude. But seeing you two together, it's obvious this is the real deal." "She makes me want to be the best version of myself," Jack said. "Not because she demands it, but because she sees something in me that makes me want to live up to it. That's what good partners do for each other." Jack's phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "No seeing each other tonight. It's bad luck. I love you." He texted back. "Looking forward to tomorrow being your husband. I love you too." The wedding was held at sunset on the beach at La Jolla, with the Pacific Ocean providing a stunning backdrop. Sarah had chosen a simple but elegant dress that moved beautifully in the ocean breeze, while Jack wore his navy dress uniform at Sarah's request. "You look incredible," Jack whispered as Sarah joined him at the altar, her father having just given her away with tears in his eyes. "You clean up pretty well yourself, sailor," Sarah replied, her voice slightly shaky with emotion. The ceremony was officiated by Major Thompson, Sarah's former commanding officer from Afghanistan, who had been ordained online specifically for this occasion. His presence connected their wedding to the place where their love story had begun. "We are gathered here today," Major Thompson began, "to witness the union of two people whose love story began in service to others. Jack and Sarah, you found each other in one of the most challenging environments on Earth, and you have chosen to build a life together based on the same values that brought you together: courage, compassion, and commitment." Sarah looked into Jack's eyes as the Major spoke, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The scared, wounded soldier she had treated in a field hospital tent had grown into a confident, caring man who made her laugh every day and supported her dreams while pursuing his own. Jack gazed back at Sarah, remembering the angel in surgical scrubs who had saved his life and changed his perspective on everything. She was even more beautiful now than she had been then, radiant with happiness and confidence in their future together. When it came time for their vows, Jack spoke first. "Sarah, 2.5 years ago, you saved my life in more ways than one. You didn't just patch up my wounds. You reminded me what was worth fighting for. Today, I promise to fight for us every day for the rest of our lives. I promise to support your dreams, to challenge you when you need challenging, to comfort you when you need comfort, and to love you through everything life brings us." Jack's voice cracked slightly as he continued. "You are my best friend, my greatest love, and my favorite person. I can't wait to see what adventures we'll have together as husband and wife." Sarah wiped away tears as she began her own vows. "Jack, you taught me that love isn't just about the extraordinary moments, but about choosing each other every day in ordinary circumstances. You've shown me what it means to be truly partnered with someone, to have someone who believes in me even when I don't believe in myself." She took a shaky breath before continuing. "I promise to be your soft place to land when the world is hard, your biggest cheerleader when you're chasing dreams, and your most honest critic when you need truth. I promise to build a life with you that honors both of our individual purposes and our shared values." "Most importantly," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger, "I promise to love you not just for who you are today, but for who you're still becoming. You make me brave enough to believe in forever." When Major Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Jack and Sarah's kiss was gentle and filled with promise. As they turned to face their friends and family, the applause was thunderous, but all Sarah could hear was Jack's whispered, "Hello, Mrs. Morrison." The reception was held at a nearby resort, with a guest list that included family, friends, and several veterans who had been helped by Heroes Bridge. The atmosphere was joyful, but intimate, exactly what Jack and Sarah had wanted. During the father-daughter dance, Sarah's dad, Dr. Robert Mitchell, spoke quietly to his daughter. "I was wrong about you deploying to Afghanistan," he admitted. "I thought you were running away from your brother's death, trying to prove something that didn't need proving. But you were actually running toward your purpose and your future." "Thanks, Dad. That means everything to me. Jack is a good man, sweetheart. He sees you the way your mother, and I see you as someone extraordinary who doesn't realize how extraordinary she is." When Jack cut in for the remainder of the song, he and Sarah swayed together as the sun set over the ocean. "No regrets?" Jack asked softly. "Only that we didn't meet sooner," Sarah replied. "I don't know about that. I think we met exactly when we were supposed to. You needed to become the person who could save lives under fire, and I needed to become someone worthy of the woman who saved mine." Later that evening, as the reception was winding down, Jack and Sarah found themselves alone on the beach, still in their wedding clothes, but barefoot in the sand. "So, Mrs. Morrison," Jack said, pulling Sarah close, "what do you want to do first as a married couple?" "Dance with my husband on the beach under the stars," Sarah replied without hesitation. As they swayed together to music only they could hear, Sarah thought about the impossible journey that had brought them to this moment. If someone had told her 3 years ago that she would meet the love of her life while deployed in Afghanistan, she would never have believed it. "Jack, thank you." "For what?" "For waiting. For believing. For making me believe too." Jack pulled back to look at her face, illuminated by moonlight and the distant lights of the resort. "Sarah, you saved my life on that battlefield. But you saved so much more than that. You saved my faith in the future, my ability to hope for something beyond just survival. I should be thanking you." "We saved each other," Sarah said simply. "Yeah, we did." As they continued to dance on the beach, both Jack and Sarah felt the profound truth of that statement. They had found each other in the midst of war and chaos, but they had chosen each other every day since in peace and normalcy. They had built something beautiful and lasting from the most unlikely beginning. 6 months later, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Jack on the anniversary of the day they first met, presenting him with a tiny military dog tag engraved with Baby Morrison, reporting for duty in 7 months. Jack's eyes filled with tears as he pulled Sarah into his arms. "Really, really? A little girl who looks just like her mama, or a little boy who's as stubborn as his dad? I don't care as long as he or she is healthy and knows how much they're loved." That evening, as they sat on their apartment balcony watching the sunset over San Diego Harbor, Jack placed his hand on Sarah's still flat stomach. "Think they'll believe the story of how we met?" he asked. "I'm not sure anyone will believe it," Sarah laughed. "A doctor and a SEAL meeting in a field hospital in Afghanistan and falling in love? It sounds like something from a movie. The best love stories usually do." Sarah leaned against Jack's shoulder, feeling grateful for every unlikely circumstance that had brought them together. They had started as strangers in a war zone and become a family in peacetime. They had built a love strong enough to survive anything because it had been tested by everything. "I love you, Jack Morrison," she said quietly. "I love you too, Sarah Morrison. Today, tomorrow, and for all the tomorrows after that." As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jack and Sarah Morrison sat together in peaceful silence, holding their future in their hands and their past in their hearts. They had found each other on a battlefield, but they had found their forever in the quiet moments that followed, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one promise at a time. Their love story had begun with a wounded soldier and a dedicated doctor, but it would continue with a husband and wife who understood that the greatest battles are won not with weapons, but with commitment, compassion, and the courage to keep choosing love every single day. The little girl who arrived 7 months later, Emma Grace Morrison, would grow up hearing the story of how her parents met, how her mother saved her father's life, and how love could bloom even in the most impossible places. And someday, when she was old enough to understand, they would tell her the most important part of all, that love isn't about the dramatic moments that bring people together, but about the ordinary moments when they choose to stay together, building something extraordinary one day at a time. The battlefield had brought them together, but it was the peace that followed that made them a family. And in the quiet moments of their everyday life, morning coffee, bedtime stories, anniversary dinners, and lazy Sunday afternoons, Jack and Sarah Morrison continued to save each other over and over again, proving that the greatest love stories are written not in single moments of crisis, but in thousands of small moments of choice. They had found their forever, and forever was just beginning.